In the village of Ijendu, where the air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and the evening drums had just fallen silent, a young boy named Leo sat on a grass mat, tracing patterns in the dust. The fire in the center of their hut was low, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. "Mama," he whispered, his voice so small it was almost swallowed by the night, "is Papa coming back to tell us stories about the clever tortoise?" His mother, Clara, felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Her husband, Daniel, had been gone for 3 full cycles of the moon. His favorite hunting spear was missing from its place by the door, and the small, carved family chest where they kept their savings was empty. She forced her lips into a brave, wobbly smile for her son, her heart aching like a bruised fruit. "The moon will be our storyteller tonight, my little lion," she said, her voice trembling as she pulled his thin blanket up to his chin. But inside she was screaming. The silence in their hut was louder than any festival drum, and the fear of what the morning would bring was a heavy weight on her chest, making it difficult to breathe in the dark, quiet room. When the sun rose, its light revealed the harsh truth of their situation. Clara moved to the large clay pot that served as their food store, her hands shaking as she lifted the heavy lid. Her worst fears were confirmed. The pot was nearly empty. A single, shriveled plantain finger lay at the very bottom, a sad reminder of past meals. Leo's stomach rumbled loudly, a hollow sound in the quiet hut. "I'm so hungry, Mama," he said, his big eyes looking up at her with a trust that broke her heart. Clara's own hunger was a sharp, twisting pain in her belly, but she pushed the feeling down. She found a tiny handful of millet she had hidden away for an emergency and made a thin, watery porridge, pouring every last drop into a small calabash for Leo. "Have you eaten your breakfast?" Leo asked innocently between sips. "I ate with the first morning birds, while you were still dreaming of great adventures," she lied, turning quickly to the cooking fire so he would not see the hot, shameful tears that welled in her eyes and streamed down her face. These were not soft tears of sadness, but hard, ugly sobs of a mother's despair, the kind of crying that comes from a place of deep failure and fierce, protective love. Knowing that pride would not fill their bellies or pay their debts to the village chief, Clara straightened her back and walked to the bustling center of the village where the women gathered to trade under the shade of the great ancient baobab tree. She approached Mama Neka, a woman with a strong presence who sold yams and cassava from a large woven tray. "Mama Neka," Clara began, her voice quiet but clear, her head bowed slightly in respect. "My son has no food left in our hut. Could I please have one small yam? I give you my word I will pay you back after the next rainy season. I will weave strong baskets for you, or I will help you till you're filled." Mama Neka looked at her with eyes that held no softness, her arms crossed over her broad chest. "Your word? Your harvest?" she scoffed, her voice loud enough for the other women to hear. "Your man has flown away like a scared bird, and your fields are dry and neglected. How will you pay me? With the dust from your empty hut? No, I cannot give you credit." The other women nearby suddenly became very busy with their own goods, avoiding Clara's gaze, and she felt their silent judgment like a physical blow. The village that was once her home now felt like a forest of cold, unfriendly trees, and the cheerful sounds of the market felt like a mockery of her own desperate situation. As Clara walked back to her hut, her hands empty and her spirit crushed, the sky, which had been a clear, brilliant blue, began to change with a frightening speed. Thick, dark clouds, the color of fresh bruises, rolled in from the east, swallowing the sun. A cold, fierce wind howled, tearing leaves from the trees and whipping up dust devils in the path. Thunder growled, a deep, angry sound that seemed to shake the very earth beneath her feet. Then the rain came, not a gentle shower but a furious downpour of heavy, stinging drops that felt like tiny pebbles. Clara ran, her clothes instantly soaked and clinging to her shivering body. She burst into her hut and found Leo huddled in a corner, his small body trembling with fear. "The sky is shouting at us, Mama," he wailed, his voice full of terror. She rushed to him, gathering him in her arms and holding him tightly, rocking him back and forth as the storm raged outside, shaking the fragile walls of their small home. The wind whistled through the cracks in the mud walls, and a cold drip of water began to fall from a weak spot in the thatched roof, landing with a steady plop into a small puddle on the floor, a constant reminder of their vulnerability. The storm passed, leaving the world washed clean but bitterly cold. The damp chill that settled in the hut seeped into Leo's bones, and by morning he was burning with a fever. His skin was hot to the touch, like a sun-baked stone, and a rough, hacking cough shook his small frame. Clara knew with a sinking certainty that she needed special medicine from the village healer, but she had no coins, no goods, nothing to offer in trade. Desperation gave her a grim strength. She wrapped Leo in her only good cloth, a colorful wrap she had saved for celebrations, and carried him on her back, setting out on the slippery, muddy path toward the healer's hut in the next village. The path was treacherous, and her legs, already weak from days of hunger, trembled with every difficult step. Her vision began to blur at the edges, spotted with dark dots. Suddenly her strength failed completely. Her knees buckled and she collapsed face first into the cold, thick mud, using her own body to cushion Leo's fall. As she lay there, helpless and defeated, a tall, calm figure appeared beside her, blocking the drizzling rain with a large, sturdy umbrella made of broad, waxy plantain leaves. The stranger did not speak a single word that he was an elder, his face a map of lines and wrinkles that spoke of a long life and great wisdom, but his eyes were unusually sharp and clear, seeing everything. He wore a simple but finely woven robe of white cotton, and around his wrist was a single beautifully carved ivory bracelet that hinted at his status. With a surprising gentleness, he helped Clara to her feet, his hands firm and sure. He then guided her and the whimpering Leo to a covered wagon waiting nearby, pulled by 2 strong, patient oxen. Inside the wagon, it was dry and wonderfully warm, a sanctuary from the harsh world. He handed her a gourd full of cool, sweet water, which she drank greedily, and then a small leather pouch filled with dried herbs. For the child's fever, he said, his voice a deep, steady rumble that was strangely comforting. Boil these in water and have him drink the tea. It will break the heat inside him. Then, as quietly and mysteriously as he had arrived, he turned and walked away, his figure soon disappearing into the gray curtain of the misty rain, leaving Clara stunned and filled with a wary gratitude. When they finally reached the safety of their hut, Clara immediately prepared the herbs as the stranger had instructed, boiling them in a pot over a small fire. The hut filled with a bitter, earthy smell. She coaxed the warm tea into Leo and soon the magic of the medicine worked. His fever broke and he fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, his breathing even and calm for the first time in days. As she laid him down on his mat, her fingers brushed against a small, unfamiliar object tucked into the folds of her wrapper. It was a tiny, sealed clay pot, no bigger than her thumb. She broke the seal and found inside not the coin she had half hoped for, but a single beautiful cowrie shell, white and gleaming like a piece of the moon. Wrapped tightly around it was a thin strip of parchment. With trembling hands she smoothed it out and read the words written in a fine, elegant hand. A river is shaped by the hard rock, not the soft sand. Bring this shell to my compound at the hill's crest. If your pride is strong you will find work. If your need is great you will find a test. It was signed not with a name, but with a simple, elegant symbol of a feather. Clara held the mysterious cowrie shell in the palm of her hand, feeling its cool, smooth surface against her skin. The man's words were a riddle, and she was too tired and hungry for puzzles. A test? What kind of test? Her stomach growled loudly, a painful reminder of their empty food pot, and Leo, though sleeping peacefully, would wake up hungry. A single shell could not be eaten no matter how beautiful it was. But the memory of the stranger's unexpected kindness, the warmth of his wagon and the power of his herbs, gave her a tiny flickering flame of hope. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she made a decision. The next day she left Leo in the care of a kindly old neighbor and began the long, arduous walk up the winding path to the hill's crest, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and desperate anticipation for what she might find there. The compound at the hill's crest was unlike any she had ever seen, surrounded by high, clean, white walls and with a heavy, carved wooden gate. When she announced herself, she was led into a spacious courtyard filled with the soothing sound of a small fountain and the pleasant shade of fruit trees. The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Thorne, a very wealthy merchant, welcomed her into a cool, dark room filled with fine carvings and stacks of animal skins. He was as stern as she remembered, his eyes watching her every move, reading her face. He did not offer her food or drink or comfortable words. Instead, after a long silence, he pointed to a small locked wooden chest sitting on a low table. "Take this to the port city by the great river," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for question. "Do not open it. Do not ask what is inside. Do not let it out of your sight. You will be paid well upon your return." He placed a small pouch of coins on the table next to the chest, a temptation that glittered in the dim light. Clara's heart sank like a stone in a deep pond. This was the test. A locked chest with no questions? It could contain anything, stolen jewels, forbidden magic powders, or secrets that could get her thrown in the chief's prison. The money in the pouch would solve all her immediate problems. She could buy medicine, yams, a new roof, and even a goat for milk. She imagined the look of relief on Leo's face when his belly was full. But then she looked at Mr. Thorne's unreadable face, a mask that gave nothing away, and she thought of her son. What would she teach him if her first step into a new life was on a shady, dishonest path? What kind of foundation would that be for his future? She took a deep breath, drawing on a strength she didn't know she possessed, and stood up straight, her shoulders back. "I cannot," she said, her voice firm and clear, echoing in the quiet room. "I need a job, not trouble. I have a son to raise, and I must raise him to know the difference between right and wrong, to walk with dignity. I will not do this." A slow, genuine smile spread across Mr. Thorne's stern face, transforming it completely and revealing a kindness that had been hidden beneath his severe expression. "Good," he said, his voice warmer now. "Very good. Sometimes life offers people easy shortcuts that lead to dark places. You looked at the shortcut and you refused to take it. That is exactly what I needed to know." He then revealed his true offer, a legitimate job right here in his compound, managing his storehouse of traded goods. It was honest, hard work, sorting spices, checking the quality of colorful Kent cloth, and keeping careful records of everything that came in and went out. He would pay her a fair wage each market day. Clara felt a wave of relief so powerful it made her knees feel weak and her eyes fill with fresh, happy tears. She had passed the test of her character, and her reward was not a handout, but the precious, solid ground of honest work and self-respect. Clara's new life began with the rising sun each day at the Thorne Trading Post, a large, airy building that smelled wonderfully of cinnamon, dried peppers, and shea butter. Her job was to count and care for the valuable goods, bundles of bright cloth, sacks of grain, and pots of oil. She learned the work quickly, her fingers becoming deft at judging quality and her mind sharp with numbers. For the first time in many, many moons, she earned her own wage. On her first payday, she held the smooth, hard cowrie shells in her hand, each one a tiny, beautiful symbol of her perseverance and hard work. She immediately went to the market and bought a fat yam, a piece of fresh fish, and even a little honey. The smell of a proper, hearty stew cooking in her hut that evening felt like a greater blessing than any festival offering. Leo laughed as he ate, his belly finally full, and the sound of his joy was more beautiful to Clara than any music played by the village musicians. But the village of Igendu had many ears and many whispering tongues. The other women who worked at the trading post, who had seen Clara's previous poverty, began to talk behind her back. They saw her now wearing clean, mended robes and her son with brighter eyes and a fuller face. "How did she get such a good job so quickly?" one would mutter while grinding peppers, her voice full of suspicion. "I heard she fainted in the mud right in front of his wagon, and he felt sorry for her," another would reply, her voice sharp and jealous. "She used her tears and her sad story to climb to a high place without doing the hard work we have done for years." These whispers were like tiny, biting flies, always present, always annoying, buzzing at the edges of her new life. Clara heard them, and the words stung, but she held her head high and focused on her tasks, making sure every count was perfect and every roll of cloth was stored without a single crease, proving her worth with silent, consistent action. Mr. Thorne, who had asked her to call him William, was often away on long trading journeys, but when he was at the compound, he watched Clara from a distance. He saw how she handled the gossips with a quiet, unshakable grace, never responding with anger or spite. He saw how she was always the first to help lift a heavy sack of grain or to stay late to finish an inventory. He saw the pure, fierce love in her eyes when little Leo came to visit after his lessons with the other children. William was a man who valued character above all else, for he knew that wealth without it was meaningless, and he saw a character of unbreakable strength in Clara. He remained a private and somewhat stern man, but he began to trust her deeply, first with small tasks, then with bigger responsibilities, and he was never disappointed. One busy market day, as Clara was carefully weighing bundles of fresh okra for a customer, a long, familiar shadow fell over her stall. She looked up and her blood ran cold. It was Daniel. He looked thinner, almost gaunt, his clothes were dirty and torn, and his eyes had a hungry, desperate glint that she had never seen before. "Clara," he said, putting on a false, oily smile that did not reach his eyes. "My wife. Look at you, all important, working for the great merchant. I have returned to my family to take my rightful place." He reached out a grimy hand to touch Leo's head, but Clara moved with the speed of a mother cobra, stepping firmly between them, her body a solid, unyielding shield. "You are not his father," she said, her voice as cold and clear as a mountain stream. "A father does not empty the family chest and disappear into the night like a thief. You are a stranger to us now. Leave this place and do not come back." Daniel's fake smile vanished, replaced by a vicious snarl that twisted his features. "You live in my family's hut, he hissed, leaning in so close she could smell his sour breath, his words for her ears alone. If you do not give me a share of your fancy earnings, I will go to the village elders. I will tell them this William Thorne is using dark juju magic in his business to steal our village's luck, and that you are his helper, his witch. I will destroy this new life you have built, and they will drive you both out into the wilderness. This was his blackmail, a poison-tipped arrow aimed directly at the heart of her newfound peace and security. A cold fear gripped Clara's heart, for the elders were powerful, and such rumors, once spoken, could spread like a wildfire, ruining William's impeccable reputation and getting her banished from the only home she had ever known. Clara did not try to face this terrifying storm alone. She waited until William returned from his travels and then went to his private meeting room, her heart pounding against her ribs like a captured bird. She laid the problem before him calmly and clearly, just as one lays out tools for a difficult repair. She showed him the notches she had carved on a piece of wood to track the missing savings Daniel had stolen, and she repeated his threatening words exactly as he had said them. She expected anger or perhaps doubt, but William simply listened, his face a calm, impassive mask. When she finished, he nodded slowly. A rotten branch does not strengthen the tree, it must be cut away before it causes the whole tree to fall, he said, his voice steady and sure. I have a speaker, a man who knows the language of the elders and the law of the land. He will go to them and tell them the true story of Daniel's character. Your job here is safe. Your home is safe. You have my protection. Do not fear this man any longer. Just as one threat began to fade, another appeared at her doorstep. Clara's own sister, Rebecca, came to her hut. But this time, she was not proud and boastful as she had been in the past. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her best wrapper was torn at the shoulder, and she carried only a small, sad-looking bundle containing all her worldly goods. Clara, she wept, her voice cracking as she fell to her knees in the dust outside the hut. He found me. Daniel promised to marry me to take me away to the city. He took the silver bracelets our mother gave me, the last thing I had of her, and then he left me too. I have nothing. I have no one. I was a fool. Can you ever forgive your proud, foolish sister? Clara looked down at the woman who had once refused her a single cup of water in her time of greatest need. She felt the old hurt rise up in her throat like bile, a sharp and bitter memory. This moment was Clara's own test of heart, a test as important as the one William had given her with the locked chest. It would have been so easy, so justified to say no, to point to the road and send Rebecca away to face the consequences of her own choices, just as she had been forced to do. But Clara remembered the profound kindness of a stranger's umbrella in the cold rain. She remembered the value of a second chance, which she herself had been given. She looked at the desperation in her sister's eyes and saw a reflection of her own past despair. After a long, silent moment, she reached out and took her sister's trembling hand. The hut is small, Clara said, her voice soft but firm, but the heart within is large enough for two sisters. You can stay with us. It was not an easy or simple forgiveness, but it was a strong and deliberate one, a choice to break the cycle of hurt. She would help her sister, but Rebecca would have to work to contribute to earn her keep. Clara believed that dignity was a right for everyone, but it was not a gift. Life in the small hut began to change in subtle, positive ways. With Rebecca now there to help fetch water from the well, tend to the cooking fire, and look after Leo in the afternoons, the crushing weight on Clara's shoulders felt noticeably lighter. William, during his visits to the trading post, noticed a new sense of peace about Clara and admired the smart, efficient way she now managed the storehouse and directed the other workers. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, he called her to his side. You have done more than just count cloth and weigh grain, he said to her, a note of genuine respect in his voice. You have brought a new spirit of order and respect to this entire place. I am promoting you to head of goods. You will manage all the workers, oversee the coming and going of every trade, and be my trusted right hand here. It was a huge promotion, bringing with it more cowrie shells in her pay and much more responsibility. It was a public recognition of all her hard work, her integrity, and her strong, unbreakable character. With her new position and the increased wages it brought, Clara's life truly began to transform in tangible, visible ways. She used her earnings to buy strong, new thatch for the roof, so it no longer leaked during the heavy rains and the interior stayed dry and cozy. She bought Leo a pair of proper leather sandals to protect his feet and a small, beautifully carved wooden elephant that became his most treasured possession. She bought a new, large and sturdy black cooking pot that could make enough stew for many days. The hut was no longer a place of fear, hunger, and cold drafts. It was a real home, filled with the warm, delicious smells of good food and the comforting sounds of family and conversation. The light from the fire and the open doorway seemed brighter inside, finally chasing away the long, dark shadows of the past. William began to visit their hut in the evenings, not as a boss checking on an employee, but as a friend and a guest. He would sit with Leo on a mat outside and tell him thrilling stories of his travels to great cities beyond the desert, of seeing the vast, endless ocean, and of trading with men who rode on giant, hairy animals called camels. One particularly calm evening, after Leo had fallen asleep inside, William turned to Clara, the firelight softening his usually stern features. "You have a strength that is rare in this world, Clara," he said quietly, his voice sincere. "My own mother was once a woman alone, struggling to raise a child after my father was killed by a lion. A kind merchant gave her a chance, a small job just as I gave you one. That is why I test people. I look for her spirit. I admire you greatly. I would like to know you not as a merchant knows his worker, but as a man knows a woman." Clara felt a strange, warm flutter in her heart at his words, a feeling she had not felt in many years. But she was a cautious woman, shaped by hardship and betrayal. "William," she replied, meeting his gaze honestly, "my heart is like a broken pot that has been mended with great care. The cracks are still there, and it is not yet ready to hold a new, strong wine. And I must learn to stand completely on my own 2 feet, for my own sake and for the son I am raising. But," she added with a small, genuine smile, "I value your friendship deeply, and I would like to know you better too, one careful step at a time." William nodded, respecting her honesty and her strength more than ever, and their friendship continued to grow slowly, like a baobab tree, strong and deep-rooted. Daniel, seeing that his poisonous blackmail had failed completely and that Clara was now more respected and protected than ever, finally slunk away from the village for good, his tail between his legs, never to be seen again. The evil rumors he had tried to plant were washed away by the powerful truth of Clara's good character and William's well-known, honest reputation. The villagers, who had once whispered and turned their backs, now saw Clara for who she truly was, a woman of immense strength, integrity and grace. They began to come to her for advice on their own small trades, to admire her well-kept and polite son, and to include her and Rebecca in the women's circles during festivals, fully accepting them back into the fold of the community. Rebecca, truly humbled by her sister's incredible kindness and forgiveness, worked tirelessly to prove herself worthy of the second chance she had been given. She apprenticed herself to a skilled elder woman in the village, learning the intricate art of weaving strong, beautiful baskets from dyed raffia. She began to sell her creations at the market, and every week she proudly gave Clara a portion of her earnings to help pay for their food and shelter. The two sisters, once divided by pride and jealousy, were now bound together by shared hardship, mutual respect and the hard work of rebuilding their lives. They were creating a new kind of family, one built not just on blood, but on chosen loyalty, forgiveness and shared responsibility. One sunny afternoon, Clara took Leo down to the river to wash their clothes, the clear water gurgling happily over smooth, round stones. Leo splashed and played in the shallow, safe edges, his laughter ringing out, a sound of pure, unburdened joy that echoed through the air. Clara paused in her work, her hands resting on a wet garment, and just watched him. She looked at her son, healthy, happy, safe and strong. She looked at her own hands, no longer soft and idle, but strong and capable, marked with the honest signs of hard work. She thought of her full food pot, her secure, dry roof, and the steady wages she earned. She had not just survived her ordeal, she had built a good, meaningful life from the ashes of her old one. A deep, quiet, and steady joy filled her entire being, as calming and life-giving as the river flowing steadily beside her. The rainy season came again, but this time, Clara watched its approach from her doorway with a feeling of peace, not panic. She and Leo sat together in their dry, sturdy hut, listening to the comforting rhythmic drumming of the rain on the thick new thatch overhead. It was a soothing sound, a natural promise of water for the crops and life for the land. Leo, warm and content, leaned his head against her shoulder, his eyes growing heavy with sleep. "Mama," he whispered, yawning, "I like the rain now. It sounds like it's singing us a song." Clara held him close, her heart feeling so full it might burst. "I like it too, my son," she said softly, stroking his hair. "It waters the seeds for our future, a future that we will grow together." William continued his quiet, patient courtship, showing his affection not with grand, expensive gestures, but with thoughtful, meaningful ones. He brought her a particularly beautiful bolt of deep blue Adir cloth, saying its color reminded him of the evening sky. He shared a rare, sweet mango from a faraway land, wanting her to taste its unique flavor. Most importantly, he treated her as a true partner, asking for her opinion on his business plans and genuinely listening to her clever ideas. Their friendship deepened and slowly bloomed into a gentle, respectful romance, growing steadily and naturally, like a strong, deep-rooted tree that cannot be rushed, its foundation built on mutual admiration and trust. The annual New Yam Festival arrived, a time of great joy, feasting, and thanksgiving for the whole village. There was music, dancing, and tables overflowing with food. Clara, wearing the beautiful deep blue dress she had made from William's cloth, stood with her sister and her son, feeling a profound sense of belonging. She watched the vibrant dancers, their bodies moving with powerful, graceful energy to the complex, thunderous beat of the drums. For the first time in so long, she felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. She was not an outcast or an object of pity. She was a valued, respected member of the community, a woman who had earned her place through her own resilience, hard work, and unwavering moral strength. As the brilliant stars began to pepper the night sky, William found her in the happy, bustling crowd. He stood beside her quietly for a moment, sharing the peaceful, joyful atmosphere. Then he turned to her, his face serious. "Clara," he said, "I do not offer you a rescue. I can see with my own eyes that you have already rescued yourself, with a courage that inspires me. What I offer you is a partnership. In my business and in my life if you will have me. We can walk the path ahead together as equals." Clara looked into his honest, kind eyes and saw a future not of dependence, but of shared strength, mutual support, and deep affection. She smiled, a true, full, radiant smile that lit up her entire face and reached her eyes. "A partnership," she replied, placing her hand in his. "That sounds like the most honest and beautiful offer I have ever received. Yes, William. We can build it together one day at a time."